We didn't know what Cabot were planning to call the new course. We were quite intrigued to find out, and I think Old Petty is a very excellent name. Actually, it's paying respect to the very ancient history of the area. This parish is called Petty Parish, which goes right back to the early medieval period, and this area, as part of Petty, is known as Old Petty, so it's a very appropriate name.
Rod Whitman's Cabot Links was so well received, and then Bill and Ben's Cabot Cliffs couldn't have asked for more. But when you look now, a decade on with those two golf courses, the play is split almost 50-50. And that is the best part, right? So I think having two courses that people debate as a group, I think that's what you're aiming for. And I know, and there's obviously more pressure in some ways on the second architect to do something that will be able to complement the first course.
The Highlands has been a destination for a while, but do you stay down by Inverness, or do you go up to Dornoch for a day or two, and then, are you going toward Cruden Bay that way, or staying right around Inverness more? I think Ben's idea to try to make Cabot Highlands kind of the hub for the Highlands, it's right there by the airport. In an ideal world, you just get off the plane and you don't even really need a car.
We've talked about the second course probably from the day we finished the first one. There's been expectations, so it's actually good to actually start it and see it from start to finish as well, and be more involved with, obviously, being the course manager this time round.
It's a very special place, and it's a very, very special part of the world. I'm sure people are going to love their journey through the 18 holes that Tom and Clyde have put together.
This is our own root zone. So all the greens and all the tees are going to be built with this sand.
Okay, so that's where you're mining.
So we're mining it all from here. We've always seen this as being the best area for the best sand, and one consistent seam is what you're looking for. So we've got this grading machine that takes it down to. When Mark passed, it was a hugely sad day, and then we went into the spiral of COVID. No members, it was all resort golf. It was a really, really hard time to get through that, but we got through that. But the board were very keen to find the investment necessary to take this on. And I picked up the phone to Ben, after Mark's passing, and it got me thinking that, maybe that's something that, that we should at least explore.
A huge fan of Mark's and what he'd done at Kingsbarns, and what Stuart called Kingsbarns 2.0 was all the things they learned and wanted to incorporate. And obviously Mark very sadly passed away before COVID.
Ben and I were in conversation in 2020, just at the end of COVID, and he was very keen. He wanted to get over, couldn't. So his first foray really was late 21 before he could get here. But he came. He saw he was already in, emotionally, I think.
In purchasing it, and I remember I showed up and I met the team. I looked around and there was a lot of change. I mean, Mark had obviously passed away, but it was like we were coming in. What would this be like? How would it work? And we were there this summer. We got together and we were talking about Old Petty and just what was happening and what was coming next, and it was all the same faces. And I think that is that was one of my measures of success, was would we be able to retain this great team, given that Castle Stuart is such a wonderful golf course. And, you know, once we purchased it, we haven't done a single thing to the golf course. I'm such a huge fan of Gil Hands, who's a friend, and Mark and everything they did, that there was really, in my mind, nothing to do.
And Ben and the Cabot brand have taken on, and the more I get to know Ben and the more I see, as I have done with my visit to Cape Breton, you know, it's always felt like it was a great fit in the glove. The operation has continued on, unabated. The development side of things with Tom Doak, you don't get a chance to work with one of the top, if not the top architect in the world very often, so that's been bliss. The second golf course we know is in great hands, and it's going to be, you know, we're going to put our best efforts towards it. And the Cabot brand, they know the importance from a marketing standpoint of having the best of the best of the best.
I said to Ben before sitting down for this interview, it's really not me you should be interviewing, it's Clyde. I mean, he did so much of the work over here.
I'm Clyde Johnson, lead associate for Tom Doak on the new course at Old Petty.
So we weren't going to finish a lot of holes that first year, and Clyde, you know, I come over in the summer and was supposed to come back in the fall, and Clyde said, you know, that doesn't really make sense. Just let me just try to knock out a few more holes, so when you come in the spring, there's a lot to look at.
You know, that shoulder in the foreground is kind of the grade of what used to be there. This was like agricultural fields, farmland. Yeah, so there was a step down, you know, to the water, but the first thing we had to do out here was to build a fake dune ridge along the shore to hide people from the birds. So that's kind of dictated a lot of the landforms along the coast, which is pretty unusual for the type of golf courses we normally build. Tend not to move too much dirt, but that was influenced by a pre-start planning condition. So yeah, everything that's kind of worked in land kind of follows from that. So there's some pretty choppy dunes, certainly on the edge of the coastal edge of the golf course, to kind of help make those dunes that we created feel natural.
One of the main reasons I agreed to do the job was that Clyde's worked for me for like a dozen years now.
So this is the back tee, about 235 yards from here. It's a little bit deceptive in this light, but there's kind of like a hog's back shoulder that kind of blends into the front of the green, and that's only about 180 yards to carry. So if you're long enough to get 180 yards, your ball will trickle down to the green. It just won't have the same control, obviously, as if you're flying it all the way there. And then there's got two sets of mere mortals tees, one at about 6,100 yards and one at about 6,500 yards, which is pretty nice length, I think, for windy conditions for a decent player. Yeah, this is about 205, I think, 210.
We've been talking about development here for 12, 13 years, and you know, to have Cabot Group coming in, to have Tom Doak coming in, it's with their experience. And we talk a little bit that when Mark and Gil and Stuart came here, that the current Castle Stuart Golf Links was kind of Kingsbarns with hindsight. And you know, as this resort develops, you know, we're looking at it as a Cabot Cape Breton with all the experience that Cabot bring in, as a Cabot Cape Breton with hindsight. You always learn as you go, you know, so it's I'm sure they've learned things from Cabot Cape Breton that they're going to help here with the resort. And Tom seems really engaged with the project, really excited with the property. You've got a 400-year-old castle right in the middle of the golf course. A lot of people talk about the fourth hole being their favorite hole in the course, and a big part of that is the wow factor of having a castle right there in the backdrop. And so to think that you're going to be able to play past that castle on 2 different occasions, it's going to be in your shot line on 3 other holes, you know, the wow factor for the golf course is already made.
You only really see the castle on the 4th hole currently, whereas there's going to be quite a few holes that will anchor you to the site. You know, the castle will be an anchor point for a lot of the holes.
It is amazing how many times playing that golf course we look back at it and we really focus on it. The main one is it's 8, the short par 5 that kind of goes, you know, you've gotten out close to the water and then you come back inland a little bit, and then the 8th hole is kind of playing across. It's kind of a blind second shot over some bunkers, but you've got the castle. You know, the castle is 300 or 400 yards behind the green across the inlet, but it obviously stands tall behind the green, and you're looking, you know, that's the line. Is if you can hit 2 good shots on that hole, you're hitting your second shot at the castle, and if you clear the bunker, you're probably on the green or pretty close. But then again, a couple other points in the round, you get back to looking at it again when you're coming back on 14 and 15, even when you're up on the tee on 11. You know, you just get a lot of views of it, and you know, that helps tie everything together more than, you know, it's kind of a subtle way to do it actually, but you know, when you're out on the most inland part of the golf course and the castle is just, it just feels like it's right there, that really helps.
So I'm John Stuart, and I'm the 21st Earl of Moray, and this area historically was Moray, and it was the biggest region of Scotland in the medieval period. It went right from the west coast right over to the east. And Robert the Bruce's daughter married Walter Stuart, and it was their son who became the first of the Stuart monarchs in the I think 1371. And so our particular family was given it by Mary Queen of Scots in 1562, and she was passing by with her half-brother James Stuart, and she made him Earl of Moray at that point. And then it was his grandson who built Castle Stuart here in 1625. So here we are. That's sort of north over here. Castle Stuart Golf Course is over there, and you can just see the top of the clubhouse. And then over to the west is Old Petty. So here it is, a good links weather day, good and windy. Looking out round the bay with the causeway going off round over the marshes. I think everyone's very excited. It's going to be an amazing course.
It looks really busy at the moment because all the high spots haven't quite germinated quite as quickly as the lower spots, so it looks like it's really popping, and there is quite a lot going on in here, but we might end up revetting some of the bunkers out here. Tom Doak, when he was on site last time, had the idea of giving each of us that were working on the project a pot bunker each, so it has to be really meaningful. So yeah. I think I might have already used mine up. I think I used mine up on 7, but I can't remember if that was Chris or Tom or not, but so we'll have to, it might end up being a couple, but this is a cool little feature that Chris Haspel put in, was like supposed to feel like a fisherman's track down to the water, you know, walking from the Boffey, so this little cut through, if there's such a thing as a signature. Now I think the 5th will be, so you angle over the burn, and then the green's sat by the Boffey, nestled in.
You've also got a couple of burns that we don't have here, and you know, one, the Lonnie burn, goes right down the left side of the whole of the 5th. So again, for the good player, you know, you're sort of looking at that thinking, don't want to be sort of drawing one into that.
And then we're looking down 5 right now, so there's a burn just over the edge there. So you know, there's kind of like a central dune ridge splitting the fairway here. So this is a pretty nice view. You can see the flag. You can see the flag from here. The green kind of just nestles down by the Boffey, the old farmhouse there, the old barn.
I don't think that necessarily the mid to high handicapper is going to necessarily see that. They'll be out to the right. But the Burns will definitely be, in play. The bothy, the classic old bothy that's there, the farmhouse.
Yeah, as we get into here, so it kind of widens out a little bit alongside the burn, so there's space to finish there. If you bail out into this safe zone over here, you suddenly can't see much. You won't see any of the flag unless the flag's way left. You're using the gale of the bothy for your reference point.
Got an email last night from a lady called Janice, whose father was born in the bothy, one of 10 siblings, and she actually had her father's ashes spread across a clump of trees right by the 10th, 11th hole there. And having sent the email, she played the course the other day and was like, I'm so thrilled that my father's family home is being, kind of incorporated within the course. And that just gave us further gusto of how we tell the story in the bothy of the family history, the old petty history, the archaeological history.
All in all, those attributes, there's not much missing, if you like, in terms of a culmination of all the great kind of attributes that links golf has. Well, I think with any 36 holes that you put together, there's always the challenge of, is one better than the other? Is one more difficult than the other? What's people's favourites? I do think that these are not identical twins. These are definitely brother and sister.
I think the difference, certainly what stands out straight away, is the crosswind holes. Castle Stuart, it's either with you or against you. There's no crosswind shots. There's a few holes here in Old Petty that you've got the crosswind.
Tom was very distinct in having it round the compass as well. So the 18 holes all have a different orientation on their tee ball. The sister course is at the moment. This is very, very different and will be seen differently in that way.
As far as similarities, I mean, you've got the marram, which is the yellowness. You've got the heather, which gives you the purple, and the light green of the fescue. Them combined together, it gives a really good look.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Old Petty on board, complementing Castle Stuart in so many ways. It's massive for the Highlands of Scotland, it's massive for Cabot Highlands. What Old Petty and Preview Play has shown us is that we have a golf course here that people are excited to play, and we know we're on to a winner in terms of bringing more visitors to the Highlands. You can see the Highlands being a destination on its own. We've got the proximity to the airport here for that connectivity to so many other areas of the UK and the world. We're all of a sudden a 6-night trip with 7 rounds playing all the great golf courses that the Highlands have to offer. It's just a great thing for future of the Highlands of golf.
And was walking around Old Petty with Tom, and I think if you had told 10-year-old me drawing golf holes, or 19-year-old me traveling the world doing golf travel, or 25-year-old me in those nascent days of Cabot links, and it's almost unfathomable. Such a dream come true.